Welcome to the last and likely final reading of Ladies and Cowboys by me, Akili Rose. This will be Chapter 5, and this is once again a reminder that this is an older version of my book than what you will be getting when you purchase my book on Amazon. The book is out March 1st, 2024 on Amazon in ebook and in paperback form. Without further ado, let's get into it! Chapter 5, Bullsreach. I was woken by an arm wrapping itself around my waist and starting to lift me up. It was dark and I could not see who was with me. I reacted violently, twisting out of the grip of whoever had grabbed me and shoving them roughly away. The person stumbled backwards and I bolted for the door, trying to yank it open. A gloved hand slammed against the door and forced it shut as the owner loomed over me, dangerously close. "It's all right, it's just me." Instantly I calmed down as I recognized the voice and my legs gave out from under me. Killian swiftly moved and caught me before I hit the floor. I stared up at him for a moment as I steadied myself. "You scared me," I breathed. Unconsciously intertwined our fingers as he tried to pull away. Leather warmed by his body heat returned the secret embrace tightly enough I could feel secure, but not so tight as to trap me. I realized what I had grabbed, but I did not immediately let go. A tingle ran through me when he did not reject me, a pleasant feeling after all the fear and uncertainty I had been experiencing. Breathing heavily, I relaxed and gripped his hand until the racing of my heart was manageable. I dropped my arm and Killian seemed almost reluctant to let go. "I didn't mean to scare you. If you're that tired, you should have gone to sleep on the bed," he told me lightly. "I just dozed off," I explained. I wiped the sweat from my skin on my pants and glanced around. My eyes had adjusted to the darkness. A bit of light from the saloon came in from under the door. Flickering lights of lanterns and fires from outside seeped in through the window. There was enough light for me to spot a problem I had not noticed until Killian was standing in the room with me. I realized with heavy trepidation that there was only one bed. "You should go to sleep. I still have some things I need to do," Killian told me as if he had read my mind. I tore my eyes away from the single bed and looked to him. He moved away from me and stooped to sit on the stool. As soon as he had landed, he took off his hat and started to reach into his pocket. He must have felt me staring, and his head moved up to peer at me. "What's wrong?" "Where will you sleep?" I asked stiffly. There was a whisper of a laugh at that. He pulled what looked like some old papers out of his pocket and placed them on the table. The actions were smooth and graceful, reminding me of a cat stretching out in a patch of sunlight. He appeared to be totally at ease with me. "I'll be here. It wouldn't be right to sleep with a lady I'm not involved with, unless you wanted to get involved," Killian said in almost a teasing tone. Blood rushed to my cheeks in the form of a raging hot blush. I was glad he could not see me in the darkness. He was an attractive man and appeared to be of good character, aside from the whole carelessly killing people thing. I turned away from him and swiftly ducked into the bed, hiding under the covers. "Not tonight, thank you," I squeaked, and there was more soft laughter from the man. The sound filled my ears and comforted my tired soul like rain's soothing heat on a summer day. The moment was short-lived, though. Killian lit his lantern and placed it down on the table. He lifted his papers up and apparently began to read. I watched for a short time, only my eyes and the tips of my fingers peeking out from under the blanket. Despite my long nap, I was still groggy and tired. Sleep came swiftly and heavily. I did not dream. I woke up early, which seemed to be starting to be a new habit. There was loud yelling outside. I opened my eyes and sat up in time to see Killian getting to his feet from the stool. I had to presume he had spent the whole night sitting there, and I was immensely thankful. He looked at me and moved a hand in a down motion, gesturing for me to stay in bed. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice cracking. "It's nothing to worry about. I'll go deal with it." The sun had not even risen yet. There were only touches of dark colors in the sky outside the window. I ignored Killian's wishes and started to get out from under the covers. He did not force me to stay still. I watched as he made a quick check of his guns. I realized what he was preparing for as he headed for the door without another word. There was nothing I could do but wait, so I sat on the bed nervously. Moments later, the yelling escalated. I could not make out fully what was being said, but I dared not go to the window in case there was another shootout. I listened tensely, my hands clasped tightly together with unease, waiting for the telltale signs of a gunfight, but it never happened. The shouts died down, and before long I heard the door swing open. I turned to face Killian and found him wiping blood off the cut on his face. "What happened?" I asked in alarm, getting to my feet. "Don't worry about it. We need to leave soon, so get ready," he said, shaking his head. There's not really anything to get ready. I still wore everything I owned minus the hat, which looked like a crumpled mess under one of the pillows. I grabbed it and put it on to hide my messy hair. Is there any chance I could bathe, or at least wash my face? Killian paused and then nodded. He pulled the door open and motioned for me to step through. I did as I was told, and he took me down the stairs to speak with the saloon owner. "Can we use a basin in the kitchen?" Killian asked. Willie, who was cleaning some tables, took one look at my miserable appearance and nodded with a light chuckle. Killian did not need to be shown the kitchen. Instead, he simply led me back to it. The rustic-looking space was an absolute novelty for me. Everything was strange yet familiar. There were dozens of fire and OSHA violations. "Here, looks like it's clean," Killian called as I spun in circles, looking around in awe. I quickly remembered myself and approached him. There was a large wooden tub sitting on a counter. The water was clean, but the bottom of the tub was not. Killian pulled some rugs off a wash line hanging in the window and placed them beside the tub before he senselessly left me alone in the kitchen. I ignored the issues I had with the debris in the tub, tossed my hat to the side, and dove my hands into the water. I began to scrub up my filthy skin feverishly before splashing it at my face and hair. The water, although not chilly, certainly woke me up some. I shook myself off and grabbed one of the rags. I dumped it into the water. I began to rub my face raw, making sure I got the back of my neck and ears. I felt livelier as soon as I was done, and I began to wet down my hair so I could at least put it up into a braid. I had 2 elastic hair ties in my pocket, by some miracle, and used both for the task. I was just finishing up when the door leading to the outside opened up. I looked up, the wet rag in one hand, my hat in the other, as I tried to get some grime off of it, and saw 3 unknown men enter. They looked young, no older than their early 20s. Each one of them held guns in their hands, ready to fire. I jerked back in surprise as all 3 of them aimed their respective weapons in my direction. "Ah, sorry, lady," the one leading them quickly apologized as he lowered the muzzle of his shotgun. The other 2 followed suit, giving me sheepish smiles and half-hearted apologies. They took a quick look around the kitchen before they started to leave. They moved as if they were trying to be quiet and sneaky, each footstep placed down slowly and carefully. I watched them with terror clenching my throat shut. I could barely breathe. The man bringing up the rear paused as he came up alongside me. "Hey, Tommy, isn't this the one Sinclair brought in?" he whispered. The leader froze and spun around to study me closely. I took a few steps back, dropping the wet rag. "Why, I think she is! We've hit the jackpot now, boys!" Tommy cheered, coming at me swiftly. He dropped all pretense of stealth as he reached for me. I stumbled backwards, looking for somewhere I could escape, but there was nowhere. The man's big hands grabbed my shirt and yanked me toward him. Both of the other 2 returned to pointing their guns at me. One was grinning at me, looking more like a boy playing a harmless prank than a man who could easily kill me, while the other scowled and lowered his gun again. "Come now, miss, we ain't gonna hurt ya. Be a good girl, right?" Tommy purred. "This ain't a good idea, Tommy," the frowning man warned, but Tommy just snorted. "Getting cold balls now, Bill? This is the only chance we have at that bastard. We got his woman, he won't do nothing." "Yeah, if you're so scared, Bill, go back to your mama, huh?" The third man sneered. Bill scowled at them both, but he did not move to retreat or raise his gun again. I was spun around, and arms slithered around my waist as Tommy switched out his shotgun for a different weapon. "Aw, poor thing's trembling like a newborn calf. You'll be okay, sweetheart." Tommy laughed as he pressed a pistol against the side of my head. I could not help but to let out a whimper. My hands were trapped at my sides uselessly. He shoved me forward out of the kitchen and back into the saloon. Killian was nowhere to be seen, but Willie was still working on cleaning his tables. The saloon owner noticed us immediately, but the moment he tried to speak, he had 2 guns shoved in his directions. Willie! You be quiet now," Tommy warned Willie, and the man shut his mouth, his eyes flickering from me to the other men. The trio made their way toward the saloon doors. I watched as Willie crept slowly away and then listened to his footsteps on the wood as he fled. I could not blame him. I would have done the same. I bit my lip to keep myself from making any more sounds in case it might enrage these men. My previous kidnapping was still fresh in my mind. Luckily, it did not seem like they cared much at all about me, as long as I moved the way they wanted. We stepped out into the sunlight. I heard several shouts of alarm and the click of a gun. My eyes adjusted to the bright morning light, and I was soon able to see that the busy little town had gone completely still. Killian stood beside Latana, his hands on her saddle, probably having been adjusting it for our trip. "Hello again, Killian. You thought we was just gonna let you go after what you've did?" Tommy sneered, the muzzle of his gun pressing firmly into my head and digging into my skin. I shut my eyes as I was pushed forward again. I could taste blood in my mouth. "Let her go!" Killian growled and earned laughter from 2 of the 3 men. "Why? You didn't let Big Jack go. You didn't let Naughty John go. Dems and Frankie are dead thanks to you. Why should I let her go?" Tommy demanded. "Tommy," a new voice called. "Let that woman go. Let's talk this out, like we did this morning." I opened my eyes and blurrily saw the sheriff from the day before had joined the crowd. He stood a ways back, his hands held out in a calming, unarmed manner. I could feel tears starting to spill down my cheeks. I looked up to Killian again and saw his expression had darkened. I could see the fury in his eyes, raw rage that I felt could sweep up this entire town in a flaming tornado of destruction and death. And I was glad for it. At least I knew he was angry for my sake. "Don't you move, Sheriff! Don't you come here! I'll blow her pretty little head right off!" Tommy roared, moving the gun about threateningly. Silence descended on the town. The only things I could hear were the heavy breathing of the men around me and the wind knocking against wooden buildings. I saw a blur of moment out of the corner of my eye and realized that Killian was not heeding the warning. 4 shots sounded, deafening me. Something zipped past my head. The man holding me jerked back. I was yanked down as he tumbled over and someone began to howl in pain. The gun against my head fell away and I instinctively rolled off Tommy onto the wooden porch of the saloon. Killian was at my side in a flash, dragging me back and shielding my eyes from the gory sight behind me. His other arm was stretched out in front of us. I had to assume he still had one of his guns pointed at the survivor of the trio. "Don't you pull that gun up! Don't you even think about it, boy! You'll be dead before you can blink!" The sheriff howled over the screams of the wounded man. Killian yanked me farther away, pressing me firmly against his body as I stumbled and barely stayed on my feet. He held me tightly, a little too tightly, but in my terrified state, I didn't care. If I could have melded into his body to hide, I would have. Killian pulled me away from the chaos and around the corner. He sat me down on a wobbly bench and then knelt in front of me. Our eyes locked, and I saw the rage was completely gone. He was back to the Killian I knew. "Are you all right? Did they hurt you?" he asked quietly. I nodded. I wasn't sure what question I answered, but he seemed to know. "We're going to leave immediately. I'm sorry you got roped into this," he told me, and he started to get to his feet. I panicked and grabbed his arm, getting up, and he paused. Don't leave me!" The anger was back then. I saw it twist his expression for a moment before he forced himself back to normal. The odd thing was, I wasn't scared of him. I did not feel like it was directed at me. Perhaps it was just delusional thinking on my part. I was convinced he was angry for me. "Don't worry, I'm not going to. I'm going to go get Latana, and then we're going to leave. I don't want you to go over there." I made myself let go of him and sat back down. I clasped my trembling hands together and looked at the ground. Killian hesitated for a moment and then began to walk away again. I shut my eyes tightly, but images of my now 2 kidnappings flashed in my head. I saw the first man falling to the ground, dead. I heard the sound of the bullet hitting Tommy and killing him. I imagined the bloody mess I had left behind, what Killian so badly did not want me to see. I opened my eyes again and took several deep breaths. Killian was quick. He got Latana and returned to my side. Luckily for both of us, she was saddled and all of our supplies were already on her, so we could leave at any moment. I lifted my head as he approached, but then noticed someone else scampering after him. "Killian!" He stiffened, his face darkening, and turned as the sheriff came after him, panting. A few other people peeked around the corner, watching. "I can't just let you go after you killed 2 men. You need to surrender to an arrest until we can set a date for court." "You can try," Killian growled out. His hand moved toward the gun at his hip. The sheriff faltered immediately and then seemed to notice me in the background, watching. His expression hardened and he held out his hands. All right, Killian. You get your girl out of here. I expect you to come back to answer for this issue within a few days, you hear? I still owe you for saving us from the Bennetts last spring," the sheriff compromised. Killian paused, seeming reluctant, but then gave a nod. The sheriff took a few nervous steps back and then turned to shoo away the crowd that was forming. Killian held a hand out to me, and after a moment I took it. I wanted to get out of this town, away from those men. I wanted to go home, or anywhere that might be safe. Killian helped me up onto Latana before he mounted behind me. He kicked her into a fast trot, which she did not seem to appreciate. The horse lumbered forward, slowly moving into the gait Killian wanted. A few others mounted their horses and started to give chase. Whatever foolish plan they had come up with was dissolved to nothing when Killian pulled out his gun. He fired a warning shot into the air. I whimpered and ducked, covering my ears from the deafening blast. A shout from the sheriff pulled the riders off us, and they turned their horses back around. Then we were out of town. That was the final chapter that I will be reading aloud of Ladies and Cowboys. Should, for some reason, you want me to read a few more, yell at me or something. I don't know.